It's so hard for us men to open up and talk about these things. We feel ashamed, we feel weak, there's something we shouldn't be, like that's why we just suck it in, and it's so harmful.
Men don't talk. Not about pain, not about depression, not about wanting to die.
I've been suffering from depression throughout the majority of my adult life. It was so bad, I was suicidal.
He broke the silence and created a place for other men to do the same.
My way of numbing that was a lot of party. So I did a lot of alcohol, a lot of cocaine, a lot of women, casual sex. That was my escape routes.
This episode goes where most men won't, and that's exactly why you need to listen.
Have you ever wondered what masculinity even is in the modern era? Are you ready to move beyond the macho bully or the soy boy archetypes? I'm Marc Azoulay, and this is the Men's Therapy Podcast. Together we'll explore how neuroscience, Jungian psychology, and Buddhist philosophy can transform your life, your marriage, and your business. Are you ready to deep dive into the minds of men? Let's begin. Hello, welcome back to the Men's Therapy Podcast. I'm your host, Marc Azoulay, and I'm here with Benjamin Vozmediano, and he is a holistic wellness coach. He runs bro retreats, which I'm really excited to talk to you about, and he does psychedelic work. So Ben, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Mark.
So I wanted to start with a personal story. Like, what got you into doing this type of work?
Depending a little bit which work, if you mean just the wellness coaching or more the bro retreats?
Yeah, let's start with the wellness coaching, with like trying to focus on holistic wellness.
I think I guess I've always been interested in, I've been playing basketball all the way up to elite level when I was a kid. Then I had a couple of years there where I was kind of stagnant, didn't do anything. Got into strength training, going up to the gym, actually that's been part of my life as well. My dad used to be more of an amateur bodybuilder, so it's been there, but my personal interest probably started growing around 25, when I was around 25 years old. I'm 47 now. And with that, I took it more seriously, I would say, from the age of 30, 31. And so that's when I've been working with it professionally as well.
Yeah, and I'm curious, like in that work, because I think a lot of men go to physical fitness first, right? But then there's often emotional and even maybe mental or spiritual gains. Did you notice that too, that at some point it became a more emotional, more mind game?
For sure, definitely. I always say, and I'm not saying that this is the case for everyone, especially men, but I would say majority, you start for the vanity, but you stay for the mind, I would say, or for the mindset. For me, it's of course, I'm when I go to the gym, when I work out, it's for me to be healthy, obviously, number one, but it's also for how cleansing it is for the mind as well. It's like many people, when they go out for a run, they feel this runner's high afterwards and how good they feel. So it's a feeling of accomplishment, a feeling of staying sane, I would say, especially in today's world. I think it's necessary.
I agree. Yeah, right. I mean, like everyone's so sedentary right now. And I think as men, we are physical creatures. We need to get out there. And what I tell to my guys, I'm curious what you think about this, is that like, I think every man needs a place where they can go 100%. Whether that's lifting or martial arts or running, somewhere they can just like really push themselves to their limit. What do you think about that idea?
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. And I don't think, if you look today compared to, when I grew up, how my parents, how they worked, they were more moving. The type of jobs we had back in the days were different. Now, I would say probably more than 90% everybody's sitting in front of a screen. Everything is done in front of a screen. And that is, I don't think we're meant to that. That is good in, certain ways and maybe for shorter periods of time, but sit there 8 hours, I could not do that at least. So I'm happy that I'm not that type of person sitting in front of a computer all the time.
I know. I think it's like really killing a lot of us, right? And, like testosterone is at an all-time low and obesity is at an all-time high. So I think it is really, destroying men out there. I'm curious, a question for you, like for that guy, right? For the guy that has the office job or maybe has a work from home job, he's a programmer or something. Like, where should he start? Because when I meet with a lot of guys, they feel like they can't even get the ball rolling at all. They're very intimidated by the gym. They're afraid to even just get and start moving at all. What's a good first step?
Oh, the first step, that is actually, and it sounds maybe a little bit lame, but that is start walking. I say like maybe you could compare that to a 1 hour pretty high intensity gym session, but just to start, it's just to get the momentum going. And I think start walking, go for a walk, I don't know, 20 minutes after lunch, for an hour, after work, whatever you do. We can even start as like 10-minute walk. Just start walking. But let's say if you go to the gym, I think it's also like just by going there, that's step number one. And then not overcomplicate things. I think also we tend to be overwhelmed with certain things. What should we do? And now when we have access to the internet, social media, these people are saying this, these people are saying that, like who to follow, what to do, what not to do. It's a jungle. And I completely understand why people getting so overwhelmed. And when you almost get in this analysis paralysis, you don't really know what to do. You're just like, shit. And then it becomes nothing instead. So I think just start by going, do the minimum. It doesn't matter what it is. And actually, you don't have to go I think also this thing about that you have to go to the gym. Why do we need to go to the gym? I mean, myself, for example, I base a lot of my workouts on just body weight training. Sure, I throw in some weights from time to time, but I try to you can do so much at home or outside. So start at home, start doing 10 push-ups. And I know probably after those 10 push-ups, you'll be like, you know what? I'm going to cram out another 30. So I think just by starting doing, just to get the lowest hanging fruit possible, do the most simple thing that this is like impossible almost to fail. Just set up like, you know what? I'm going to do 1 minute of push-up as many as I can, for example. So just by starting a little bit, I think that's important.
Yeah, kind of like priming the pump a little bit, right? And getting used to winning, I think is really important, right? Getting it to setting a goal and accomplishing it. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, let me ask you, because you mentioned it, I hear from a lot of guys, this idea of information overload, and we're a mental health wellness podcast, so in some ways we're contributing to that. But I think that it's really true. There's so many influencers out there. There's so many products, so many courses, so many programs, so many things. And like you said, it can be very difficult and overwhelming for guys to get started, right? I think especially, guys that are these sedentary dudes, a lot of them are very intelligent too. So they like to research a lot. But when it comes to actually acting, it's very difficult. So I'm curious from your perspective, like what are some basic kind of first principles that someone can use as a guidepost that are very simple to help them start to get healthier?
I usually say, 3 or 4 points that if you do that, as they say like this, it's very simple, but it's maybe not that easy actually to do all those things and be consistent with it. But let's start. Sleep. Get those 8 hours of sleep. Don't scroll on your phone until 11, 12, 1 a.m. in midnight or over past midnight. So start respecting your sleep. And it's not that you have to go to bed at 8 p.m., but at least maybe somewhere between 9, 11, I would say. But at least get in those 8 hours of sleep. Start getting a consistent sleep routine. Number 1. Try to hit the gym, do some strength training 3 times a week. That's 2. Number 3, I'm actually going to name 4. So, and number 3, try to eat in pounds, 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight, or if you weigh in kilos, 2 grams per kilo. And also, I would say, try to get in the steps, like the walking steps, like anywhere between 10 to 15,000 steps a day, which is not that hard. For many people, like, oh, that's so hard. I mean, me, myself, without even forcing it, I'm closer to 20,000 steps every day. But of course, it's because I prefer to walk. Of course, I take bus because I need to go to work. It's a little bit far. But then when I'm in the city, I walk everywhere. If I'm not in a very hurry, of course. I try to walk. Something also, I feel like we're so sedentary. So those 4 points, if you do that, I swear, that person will be healthier than 98% of the people here on Earth.
Yeah, I mean, that's just incredible.
Without a doubt.
Sad at the same time, right? That
I know.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't know what you think, Mark, but what I said to you, it's not that hard, right? Those 4 things.
No, I think it's very doable.
It's kind of basic things, but today that's not so basic. That's the sad part of it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, like you're saying, people are shackled to their computers and shackled to their job and stuck in these kind of like addictive loops where they're not doing what like basic animal functioning, right? If we're a monkey, that's what we're doing, right? We're lifting stuff, we're walking around, we're sleeping. Like that's what the body needs.
And I read this. It's actually, I don't know when it came out. I think it was like 2019 or something. They did. It was not a study. It was just some pure data coming out from, I don't know exactly where it was, some organization in the US. By the way, are you based in the US or in the UK?
U.S. Yeah, we're based out of
Oh,
Colorado.
you're in the US. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Oh, Colorado, cool. I used to live in LA for several years. Anyways, what I wanted to say was that, well, this was among Americans, but I think you could probably apply this into many countries. Certain countries maybe are better, but in the US, that 97% of the population, all Americans, not 97% of the population. So the Americans spend 97% of their time indoors. I don't know if you read that thing.
No, but I believe it.
No. And exactly. And the thing is, when you hear it when I first heard it, I'm like, what? 97% of their time, they spend it indoors. But then you think, of course, okay, wake up, you put yourself in the car, you drive to work, you're there for 8 to 10 hours, depending who you are. Then you go out from work, inside to the car, sit in the car. Some people commute for like an hour even, come home, eat, go to bed. So they constantly, they're out maybe for just a couple of minutes a day, depending what they're doing. And then weekends, sure, maybe they go out, do some stuff. And that is also like, I think it's so unhealthy. And I'm not saying we have to start spending 5 hours a day outside, but at least start getting in more time outside, which is also so healthy and so, more natural for us as well, and not be only at home. And of course, living in the US, I remember they're making everything so convenient. Their drive-throughs through everything. I remember I got shocked. I remember I was going to take out some cash from Chase Bank, and they even have drive-through with the ATM, which I was like, wow, only the US you have this. So it's like, it's convenient, but it's also like, no, I think we're meant to actually stop the car, go out, and, move a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. It's convenient, but it's isolating, because so many men are all alone. I want to pivot, talk about your bro retreats too, of connecting men with each other and doing this masculine work, because I think that's so necessary. Because yeah, like you said, it's so easy to like work from home, get everything from DoorDash or from Instacart, have everything delivered to your house or Amazon.com. And you don't really have to talk to anybody if you don't want to. You don't have to go out into the world, to be outside at all if you don't want to. It's wild. So yeah, tell me about those bro retreats you've been running.
So the bro retreat I'm running, I started it, let's see now, it's back in 2023. So yeah, almost 2 years ago since I did it. And why? So I've been doing some retreats before. When I lived in the US, I had a couple of retreats, and also when I left the US, I was dividing my time between Sweden and Costa Rica, and in Costa Rica I had some retreats. So retreats is something that's always been something that I had, wanted to develop a little bit more. And for me, why I started bro retreats is just because of my personal journey myself. So I've been suffering from depression throughout the majority of my adult life. Today, I have it much more under control. So I would say the past 2 years has been very, very good for me. But before that, I had my episodes of depression, and it was so bad, I was suicidal, and it was really, really bad certain times. So for me, it's the big turning point. I'm going to fast forward maybe a little bit, and feel free to jump in and ask questions.
I do want to jump in. Can you say more about the depression? Let's like sideline the retreats and talk about that a little bit, because like looking at you, right? Like you're a good looking guy, you're in shape, right? Like you're successful, but you suffer from depression. And I think a lot of men are very similar to that, right? Where I think a lot of us suffer in silence, where you don't know that somebody has depression. It's probably not that obvious. So yeah, if you could just take a moment and talk a little bit about what that experience was like for you, and what helped with that.
Absolutely. So for me, when I started to acknowledge my depression and realized like something was not right, but kind of still I didn't really want to accept it, started probably around my, I would say 30, 31. So that was when I would just move to Barcelona. So by the way, for the listeners, I'm originally here from Sweden, half Swedish, half Spanish, and then when I was 30, I moved down to Barcelona, Spain, lived there, and then moved to the US. But I don't have to go through all that. But it was after my move to Barcelona, where I started feeling having these bouts of depression, and I didn't. it's almost like I didn't really wanted, I didn't want to understand what was going on. I just knew that when I went down, I went down in there like a deep rabbit hole, that I could be there for days, sometimes even weeks. And my way of numbing that was a lot of party. So I did a lot of alcohol, a lot of cocaine, a lot of women, casual sex. So that was my escape routes. Those three things. And but just to fall back into that shit, because as you probably know, having if you had a crazy night out, often, days after, you feel pretty bad. But it was this evil hamster wheel. I was constantly in it. And I knew it was not going to get better, even though maybe in the moment I felt better when I did those things. But so that was, and it was so bad. And it kept on going, actually. Even when I left Barcelona, and this is at a time when I was still working also professionally with wellness coaching. So I had almost like a double life. I had this very crazy party life, doing drugs and shit, drinking alcohol, insane amounts. We're talking 3-4 times a week. And also because I had an event company, plus I had my personal training business. So the event company was a lot of partying. So when I left Barcelona for the US, that's when I left also. I was like, you know what, now I'm just going to focus on my health and just be focusing on my wellness coaching. So Miami became the first stop. And in Miami, I managed to meet a guy that became my closest friend, and he was a party animal. And Miami, I don't know if you've been, but Miami probably even worse than Barcelona because you have all the day parties. So there was like literally almost nonstop. So I got into that again, and also had major bouts of depression in Miami, left Miami, moved to Huntington Beach, where I met my then ex-wife, and from Huntington Beach into LA. And why I tell this whole story is because it wasn't until 2015. So I moved to Barcelona in 2009. So 6 years after, I would say, I started really better said, 6 years after I started to acknowledge that I had something, depression, whatever it was, even though I really didn't want to dive deeper into it. So it's 2015, I felt like I need to do something about this, because if not, this is going to kill me completely. I will take my life. I will end my life. So that's when I decided to go to Peru to do ayahuasca. So that was my first, contact with psychedelics, because I've been hearing about it, been reading about it. I have some good friends that have been doing it. And I thought this might be actually something that could help me to just, broaden, open up my views on things and to be able to actually connect with myself inside. So went there for 2 weeks, did 4 ceremonies of ayahuasca in the jungle. And then I did also San Pedro, the cactus, and came back. That was revolutionizing for me. I got very interested in general with psychedelics, starting experimenting with mushrooms, psilocybin mushrooms, and from mushrooms it became LSD, and on that way, for me at least, and I'm not saying this to promote psychedelics to people to do it, because it's a big step, but for me it was a huge help. And it's not that suddenly you get rid of the depression or anything. It's just for me to get a much better understanding of myself and the depression and where it comes from, to really go back in history of myself and see, eventual traumas, connecting my dad, there's so many things, past relationships and stuff. So it's been a long, long journey. So with that, I actually come to an acceptance finally also. And I also started talking about it more openly. I felt like, what, I need to come out with this, because this is this huge monster in me that I believe a little bit is like a Dracula. You put Dracula in the light and it kills it. Not that it was going to kill my depression, but I'm like, I want to become so vulnerable and open up about my biggest secret. So that's what I did in 2020, 5 years later than from my first psychedelic journey. But that's when I decided in a blog post, just open up completely. And yeah, some people around me knew about what was going on and what I've been going through, but there were a lot of people, I would say the majority of the people that didn't know. And they, of course, they were very surprised, and kind of the same reaction what you said there. Oh, but shit, Ben, you're just such a good looking guy, and you're always so happy and positive, and you always, went for your dreams. You moved to Spain, you moved to the US. Sure, I've been a functioning person and stuff, but then I'm normally a very energetic guy. I'm very happy usually, but also I have my very lows, and those lows are very, very low. So for me, that was also such a relief, even though I felt so naked. I never felt so naked in my life coming out with that big secret that I had. But for me, that was the first step to, truly be able to I'm not going to say get rid of it, because it might come back, but I have such a more respect for it. And it became much better after 2020. But in 2022, that's when I hit the wall completely. That was my biggest depression of them all. And since then, pepper, knock on wood, I haven't had any major depression. So that's when I hit the wall. And it was like, I would say, the wall of depression. And that was, actually, I didn't thought I was going to come out of it alive. That was really, really bad. But looking back, I'm not going to say I'm happy that I went through it because it was a very unpleasant moment. But at the same time, I'm grateful that I actually went through it because I needed that. For me, the biggest wins in life has been through my absolute most difficult moments. Whether it's been depression or it's been, whatever it's been. But I always see them as my big, big teachers.
Yeah, I think we need those rock bottoms, right, to really have that mirror put in our face and have to recover from it. I really appreciate you telling your story. I've also struggled with depression and very similar story down, getting sober, doing psychedelics. I think it can be really powerful to overcome that. For me, going to therapy too, of course. I'm curious with your depression, are you medicated now, or was it something that it was based in a lot of trauma, and once you kind of worked through that trauma, the depression lifted? I know sobriety definitely helps, right? Because you're just normalizing your brain chemistry. But yeah, do you have a sense of like the root cause or what helped you?
And what helped me, so for me, the first steps was just, acknowledge it and accept it, because that was something I couldn't do. I think that's very important. But I'm not going to say just because you accept it, suddenly, miraculously, it would just vanish. Absolutely not. So for me, what has been huge and some really big tools that has helped me, and I still do today, obviously taking care of yourself, training, nutrition, sleep. I think that's very important. Alcohol, I haven't said like I will never ever drink again, but right now I haven't been drinking since 2.5 years almost. It's because thank you. And it's because I don't feel for it anymore. It's for me, I could probably miss, having some beers and some couple of glasses of wine, but it's for me it's not even the little buzz that you get. And it's not that I have problem or struggle with alcohol, like, if I start drinking, it just completely gets screwed. Like, last line of Coke I did was 2018, 2019. I definitely came to a point where like I cannot do this. That was the most destructive. That's horrible as as I say, the devil's dandruff. So that's horrible. Alcohol, if people want to drink it, I feel like it's fine. I never had issues. I can drink moderate. I never go like, I don't get shit-faced like that. But so for me, cutting out alcohol, also, of course, I feel so much better. So much better. So that's been huge. And another, I would say, among the legal things, of course, psychedelics has been a huge help for me. But what I always tell people, a very, very, probably one of the most powerful things a person can do, especially us men, is to start journal. It might sound, not so special, but like, why? Why should I just start writing down stuff? Whether you write on the computer, you write it on a, little notepad with a pen, it doesn't matter how you put it down, but just jot down, your thoughts, whatever it is. Let it be like your mental windshield wipers. It doesn't have to be like a beautiful page written about whatever. No, just like, let it come out. Whatever it is on your mind, just let it come out. So I journal literally almost every day. Sometimes I might miss a day or whatever, but usually I always write every day. Whatever's on my mind, I just jot it down. And why I say this is because it's a beautiful conversation you have with yourself, you and the text that you're writing. Yeah, and I think it's so important, even though sure we can be thinking about it, and but it's very different when you actually write things down, because you suddenly comes up with more stuff and you become more creative. And that stuff. So I think that has helped me, at least, very, very much.
If you're enjoying the podcast so far, please hit the subscribe button and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us to reach more men and inspire them to become the best versions of themselves. Thank you for your support. And now back to the show. Yeah, I think it's critical, right? Just to kind of take an inventory of where you're at, see how you're feeling, and express it. It is again, I think something as men, we're not really told to express ourselves. We're kind of shooed away from arts or from music or from journaling or dance or things that I think are more expressive. That's more like in the feminine, world. But as men, we need that. As humans, we need that, right? We need to be able to express our feelings and channel it that way versus just trying to fix and correct everything. You mentioned also in your story leading a double life, that you had this party life and you had this like wellness life. And I think a lot of guys have that too. I think a lot of guys have like their work life and their home life or their work life and their party life or whatever it is. So what stands out to me about your story is that you integrated them. You integrated your professional life and your personal life. Can you talk about that? Because I have to imagine that is unbelievably powerful.
You mean how I manage my
How you
two?
integrate them, how you went from like a bipolar personality or just light and shadow to one thing.
Oh God. I mean, it definitely after Barcelona, it kind of stopped, except in Miami. Sorry, Miami as well. But then eventually, I got from that moved to LA. I kept on getting out, meeting people, and LA is also a little bit of a party city. So you got into that. But I wouldn't compare that to Barcelona. Barcelona is definitely the time in my life where I kind of lived a double life. And then suddenly started becoming more and more united and me just to go one route, which was, I would say, after I moved to the US. Sure, I had some wild party nights in Miami and LA, but it was nothing compared to Barcelona because it was on such a consistent basis. It was weekly. It was so much. So, and also, of course, now looking back retrospective, you can see that was, sure, of course, it's fun. You have a fun night out. It's not about that it was completely 100% escape routes, but I also can see how much I was trying to numb my feelings and my emotions. As you said there, us men, we're not supposed to talk about them. And, when those start to arise, we should try to numb them. They start to arise, you numb them. If it's alcohol, if it's porn, if it's, gambling, we have all kind of escape routes. God, I know people still, friends of mine that are my age, they're still there. And I'm like, they're numbing it with different things. They're always on the run. They can't even sit still for 10 minutes. And another very powerful thing, talking about powerful things here, journaling. I went to a Vipassana retreat. I don't know if you know what it is. It's a 10-day silent meditation retreat. I think, especially us men, oh my God, it could be the most powerful thing ever. Because you go nuts finally. I started talking for myself, laughing and talking to myself out in the woods where nobody could see me because I'm like a shit, nobody can hear me. Because I was at this little retreat in the middle of Sweden. And it was crazy. You can't talk, no eye contact, nothing. You can't read anything except what's on the board. And it's the same schedule every day. Wake up 5 a.m. or 4 a.m. or whatever it was. And then, it was like the same shit, everything. You have a designated spot in the dining room. There's like, they made it so perfectly like that you shouldn't be confused or anything. It's just you in your mind. And oh my God, what I think that will break down so many men, especially these men that tend to go for these escape routes and try to numb their feelings with other stuff. That will be so helpful. They will be painful as fuck. Oh, sorry. I don't know if I can curse.
You can. Yeah, you can.
All right, okay, cool. No, so, but I think that is super, super powerful. And, yeah, and also that was talking about bro retreats. Now we're jumping maybe a little bit, but that was also for me. And let me see, I think I did bro retreats just before that. But for me, it was something I'm like, oh my God, this could be so powerful to start incorporate. Maybe not a bro retreat, which could be completely silent because I want to talk with this the opposite. You're there to talk, so we should talk. But I could definitely see something similar where you go away. And it doesn't have to be 10 days because that's kind of brutal. But I told people afterwards, like my key takeaway points would be go by yourself. Go rent a cabin in the woods. Like you have no access to anyone. Shut off the phone. Maybe bring a book if you want. Or maybe not a book, but at least what I missed, for example, was something to take down notes because you're not allowed to take down notes. So I started every day. I repeated to myself several things that I had to remind. That I made a list in my head of 10 points. And then I had to, just to train myself, I was like repeating it to myself so I wouldn't forget about it. If you ask me now, I've already forgotten most of it. But back then, it was good. It worked.
Yeah. I think retreats are so powerful. I mean, so I do like an isolation retreat every winter. I do the things I was talking about, go rent a cabin for a week. And then, yeah, I'm trained in Buddhism. So I do a community retreat, every summer. So whether it's a Buddhist retreat or I've done ayahuasca a handful of times, or vision quest. So I'm all for it. I think we need that. Like I said, we need to break our brains a little bit and then do a reset, and to kind of dovetail what you're talking about. I think men will do everything physically. We'll do a cleanse. We'll do a bulking and a cutting. We will, do a juice fast. We'll do everything for physical health. But then when you say, hey, do this mental health thing, we get really spooked by it. It's pretty
So
wild.
spot on. So
Yeah.
spot on. I agree. We do those very easy, small, fast things. But yeah, where it takes where it demands some work, what you said, the mental stuff, oh, hell no. They will run away.
Yeah, because we know we're all like a little bit crazy, and I think we need to like break open the brain. So yeah, tell me about your bro retreats. Like walk me through, what does a typical one look like?
A typical one. So, well, as I said, that was also the whole journey. What I said, that was, I would say, was the culprit, or the thing that ignited bro retreats, that I felt like I need to do this. Just also because I'm so open and vocal about my stuff. I said, like, I could talk about literally everything that has been happening to me mentally. I have no shame. So for me, it was like, and I noticed that with men, it's so hard for us men to open up and talk about these things. We feel ashamed, we feel weak. There's something we shouldn't be, like, that's why we just suck it in. And it's so harmful and so detrimental in the end if we do it. So I'm like, can I be one of those voices at least to, say like, hey, look at me. I've been doing this. Because as soon as one opens up a little bit, the other one comes like, oh shit. Because when I start opening up about my stuff, I got so many DMs or emails from people I knew, people I kind of knew, or strangers, men. They're like, oh shit, Ben, you know what? Fuck, this happened to me also been having a hard time. So it's like more and more started opening up. I'm like, damn. But in silence, kind of. Or behind the curtains, or whatever you want to call it. So for me, it's like, I think going away. So that's what I did. I started renting a cabin up in the north of Sweden. Beautiful place, just by a little lake. And also, during winter time, we did ice baths. So what it consists of, I take around 3, maximum 6, but I think it's like 3, 4 is almost the best. So you get a chance to talk. Smaller groups are always more powerful, I feel. So it started taking smaller groups of men going up there, and we stay there for 4 days, where we did some training, we did ice bath, sauna, and a lot of talks. A lot of talk. And the funny thing that when it is, so on those retreats, because that was my first, I wasn't nervous about it, but I felt like, oh, we will see how this will go. Will it only be me talking, or how will it go? But and this has been the case for every retreat that I've been having, is that as soon as we got into the car, because we always drove up together to the cabin, they started chatting and everybody started opening up. And it was literally non-stop talk. It was only on the way home. Everybody was probably so exhausted of talking. So everybody was just like, sitting still. And that was for me so beautiful to see. Like I was kind of fly on the wall. So I didn't have to do that much. I came in, gave some pinpoints here and there, but I just let them talk. And it just came fluently, just more and more and more. And it was so beautiful to see. So, yeah, I always say that the retreats I've been having, it's all about talking. Then that we do some cool stuff. We go on some, we do some exercises, some workouts, some brutal workouts. We do some cold ice baths and all that stuff. And we also have some cool walks, and we discover different places there around. But it's all about the talking, all about the talk. And we're not there to talk about sports or anything. No. Everybody's actually there to talk about the stuff that they need to talk about. And then they started hearing, one person hears something and the other one can relate to it. And then it starts to become a, much better communication and conversation. So it just unfolds by itself. So beautiful.
Yeah, I noticed the same thing in my retreats. And also for my company, we do these community hikes every quarter, right, where the guys meet up and we just go on a hike. And it's like they're so hungry for it. They're so hungry for it. And I was too, right? When I was in my self-development journey, I was like, I thought to anyone who would listen, because you need it. And like you're saying, like, dudes, it's like, yeah, we're not talking about sports. We're not talking about the weather. We're not talking about our cars, like we're just talking about the real shit that comes up. And once that little crack happens, the guys just start to fill it and fill it and fill it because they've never had that experience before. And I'm curious, like you've been running these for a while now, like what you notice any themes or trends or topics that seem to come up? Like, what do you think men are really struggling with today in general across the board?
Or what I would say is the main struggles I've been hearing, mostly at least in those retreats I've been having, is some struggles with their partner and parents. If it's the dad wound, mother wound, whatever it is, but I would say those are the things that mostly comes up. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely see that too. I see a lot of like loneliness. I think a lot of men are very alone, where like they could be very social, but they feel like nobody really like knows them or cares about them. I see a lot of like nice guy stuff. I wonder if you see like the nice guy syndrome, where it's like the man with the wife that is just saying yes to everything, and trying to be like the good provider and the good husband, but he like actually like really hates her underneath it and has a lot of resentment and judgment, and he doesn't know how to like actually broach that, doesn't know how to have a conflict. And then, yeah, I think guys that feel like they're tapped out. So I'm happy that you do like exercise with them, because I talked to a lot of guys where like there's no room for them. And there's no room for their hobbies. There's no room for their exercise. They feel like they're just full-time, husbands and fathers.
Exactly. Correct. And I think what you said there, they have work, maybe they have also kind of a demanding job, and then they come home, they have their wives, kids. So of course that takes up a lot of time, but I think that's still so important for us men to gather. Because if we look at it, women, I would say, at least if I look around here in Stockholm, Sweden, that women tend to get together much more often. They're still hanging out with their friends. Us men tend to be, as you said, more lonely in that term. Like we don't have that many friends anymore because, we haven't maintained contact with some, the high school friends or whatever it is. Then I would say mostly have their friends are the guys from work. It's like colleagues, which is nothing bad, but I feel like we tend to also lose contact with the old friends that we have, or even if it's friends that you've been having for a while, it's just that you don't see them. Me inclusive. Wow, I have really good friends here, but I feel like I see them less living in Sweden compared to when I lived abroad. Because when I lived abroad, every time I get home, they're like, "Oh, this is you. I want to meet you. I want to meet you." They're like eager to meet you. But then when you're here, you meet them like twice a year. I'm like, all right.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you a question, right? It's like, how do you make friends as an adult, right? As like, 35 plus, how do you meet other guys? How do you guys on man dates,
He's kind of young. How do you? Yeah, good question. Good question. I think we need to have that curiosity to want to do it. But coming up, I think also the older we get, we're also getting used to our routines. And maybe we're like, you know what, I'm kind of fine. I don't need to go out and meet someone. I just home, chill, lay in the sofa, watch Netflix, whatever, or hang with my wife and the kids or whatever. So they maybe the interest is not really there. And it also depends from person to person. I think people also might become more and more introvert nowadays compared to I think it was more social back in the days. Now we have so much stimulation from so many things. If it's the TV, and the TV is not compared to the TV, because we had a TV when we grew up as a kids, but you had a couple of channels, that's it. And you have to be there exactly at that time to watch a show, whatever. Now you have everything on demand. And you guys in the US, you have like 1,000 channels. I don't know if we have that many here, but it's so crazy. And then of course, the internet, social media, we are constantly bombarded with all the other type of stuff. So I think we're kind of exhausted also to actually take the step to be like, you know what, I'm going to call a friend and go out. Because you're so mentally drained from work, from everything you see online and everything.
I think that's really true. I think these things, like, they simulate connection, right? And so like your brain thinks you have a lot of friends because you watch a lot of TV, or you spend a lot of time on social media, like looking at pictures of people. but there's some level where it doesn't click, like on your soul or on your heart level. It just doesn't, it's not real. So I think it leaves people feeling really empty. And yeah, I think people are exhausted, and we don't like need each other in the same way. I'm curious, I'm curious about Sweden, because I know your environment can be tough. Like I moved with my wife 3 years ago to a town called Evergreen. It's like a mountain town. I'm at 8,500 feet. It's actually like blizzarding outside right now, and like I need my neighbors. Like for the first time in my entire life, I know my neighbors. You know, there's like an elderly couple that lives next to us that like, I help plow their driveway or, bring them over food. We've had them over for dinner. There's a lot of young couples that we, do childcare. We, exchange childcare. But like, it wasn't until my environment got really brutal that I needed to talk to anybody. But I certainly imagine back in the day when life was not as convenient, you would need to know the people that lived near you just so you could survive. Is Sweden like that? Is parts of Sweden like that? Or is it still more Americanized where everyone's in their own little bubble?
Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you wanted to open up, but you were afraid that it wouldn't be taken well? You ask yourself, what's the point? Nothing's going to change anyway. So you do what you always do. You push it down, numb out the pain with a drink, a night out, or pornography. I've been there myself, and I know that men lack the outlets for emotional expression, which is why I founded Men's Therapy Online, a healing hub for men's mental health. If you've been knocked on your ass or just crave meaningful connection, join Men's Therapy Online, a community of men who just get it. We offer individual therapy, men's groups, and powerful retreats, all led by licensed therapists. At Men's Therapy Online, we will help you to get back on your feet and take your life to the next level. Start your journey today at menstherapy.online.
Oh, I think that depends a little bit where you go in Sweden. I think Sweden different as the US. US is probably even more because you guys is such a big country. But here in Sweden, I would say Stockholm, and I live in Stockholm, I'm from Stockholm, just outside Stockholm. I mean, not the nicest city, because I feel like the people from Stockholm are, especially, and maybe it's just because I lived abroad for 15 years, but I feel like people here are they're not nice. You go up north and you find the most like authentic Swede, I would say, way more nicer, more open people, different type of mentality. I think some part of the southern of Sweden as well. But I feel Stockholm, it's, I wouldn't say, I'm not proud of the Stockholmians or whatever you want to call them. So, yeah. But I also think what we were talking about there regarding hanging out and stuff, I think social media has taken away a lot of that. Because people hang out on social media and they, create different chats with people, talk, they DM, so you kind of have contact with friends, but it's through written. Or sure, you can maybe send voice memo or whatever, but it's not. And some people also share a lot about what's going on in their life, and then you see everything, so you don't really maybe need to catch up with that person. So it's a good thing. I think it has both sides. Social media has some very good stuff, but it also has some very bad stuff. Which, as you said, I think we need this human connection and actually meet up.
Yeah, we have places where we can actually connect. And I think connect as men, I think in a lot of indigenous cultures, I know certainly in like Nordic culture, right, there would be like the men's lodge where all the guys would go and they would chat, some would drink, some wouldn't, but it would be a place where you would talk about the goings on in your village and, figure out like who needs more food and who needs the barn repaired and that kind of stuff, right? And just really try to like shepherd the village together. And we just don't have that. Like I think it got, I think the church did it for a while, but at least in America, the church is definitely on the downswing. And, the bar did it, but once you add in alcohol and partying, it's a different thing. It's not so much community focused. But we don't have those like male spaces to just like talk and not just talk, but like be leaders of our community. I think that's an important part, is like chatting about the issues that the community has and then trying to figure out how to solve them. Because I think as men, that's what we're really evolved to do, is be guardians and protectors of our family and of our community.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah. So
and how far are you from Denver right now, you said?
I'm about like 40 minutes out, so we're still pretty close.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I'm down I-70, which is like the ski highway, so it hits the mountains pretty quickly.
All right. Cool. Are you, by the way, talking about another subject, are you following the NBA?
No, I'm not.
Oh, no. No, that's the only thing. I've been becoming like kind of distance from sports in general, but a few things NBA, because I used to play basketball. So I just saw Denver Nuggets. They won this crazy game against Oklahoma. That's why I was asking.
Nice. So I'm curious for you, like, what does the healthy modern man look like? You know, if somebody was doing it right or doing it good enough, let's say doing good enough because no one's perfect, right? Like, what does masculinity need to grow and change into?
Um, Good question. Hmm. Well, it's definitely not the typical, and this is not to bash all the dads out there or the typical middle-aged men nowadays, but I even did a post about this. Like back in the days, the meme or the saying "dad bod," that was a funny meme. And now I feel that's the reality for most men. And I'm not saying everybody has to walk around with a six-pack and looking like Arnold Schwarzenegger. Absolutely not. But like regain some of the masculinity. And just also, if you look back in the days, how men looked back then, and now the obesity problem we have, and especially in the US, where I think is it up to like 75% of adults are obese or something like that. It's like crazy numbers. And I mean, and once again, it's not about having this dream body. I'm not saying that's the only thing a man has to think about, because there's so many. Honestly, if I have to say, I'd rather be very sane up here, maybe not looking the best in my body, but than the opposite, of course, because that I've seen those cases also. People that look, I mean, amazing and in all aspects, but up here it's completely a shit show. So I think it's so important but I think, yeah, I mean, good question there. I don't know exactly how to answer that. What would the ideal man be like today? I think we have to start looking back how we used to live more. And I'm not saying we have to start living like that, but look a little bit the type of socializing and everything. I think it's so important. I mean, if you look maybe 70s and the 80s, even beginning of the 90s, I think it was way, way better when it comes to those things.
I think that's true. Yeah, I mean, I'm hearing like just a more active lifestyle in general. I'm hearing, being involved with community, being connected to people. I think like I would add being more emotionally intelligent. I think being like the kind of caveman doesn't work anymore, but I think being able to tap into our feelings and inspire people through emotions. Yeah, I think we need that.
To flick in there, I would say just what you said, emotionally intelligent or intelligent, and that is probably something we shouldn't take from the past. Because if we look back many years, and let's say our fathers or our grandfathers, generations back, where men, that was probably even way more, I should say, obscure, or something that definitely didn't happen. You probably didn't see a very vulnerable man in the 60s or 70s, probably not. So I think that is something definitely that I believe we are on the right path, that we are, men are becoming more openly talking about these stuff, emotional stuff. But I think we can do way better because we're still human beings, just as women are. It's not just women that can break down and cry or, open up and talk about very emotional stuff, that we men can do it. And it's not about we get to all start crying or, just completely break down. But I think it's so, for me, I love crying, for example. For me, that's so powerful, and it's such a release. For me, that's a sort of purge, or just cry it out, whatever it is. But for us to be able to talk about things and just grab a friend and be able to do it, because that is also, I see the problem is that even though you are very close with certain individuals and they're suffering, you can see, but they still don't want to really open up and talk about it. And I think because probably they have this shame. And I think that it's so sad where women, if they have a problem or of any sort, they grab their friend like, hey, girl, we need to talk. They sit down and they talk about it for hours. Whereas as men, we feel almost embarrassed to say something, and we might open up maybe to a girlfriend or maybe your mom or sister or something, but definitely not to another man, which I feel like is so sad that we're here for that. And not feel uncomfortable or not feel like maybe I'm oversharing or I don't want to put this thing on him. The opposite. That's what friends are for. For me, that's real friends. If a friend will be like, oh shit, I want to, I don't know, get some distance from him because he started opening up talking about this, then it's not a friend in my eyes. So I think it's so important for us to be normalize that much more.
Yeah, I agree. Right? Yeah, I think like, because you also need a male perspective on things. like I think women are great and they're obviously incredibly emotionally intelligent, but they don't understand some of the masculine only stuff. They don't understand, I think, like, how brutal we can be on the inside, how violent we can be sometimes, how, lustful we can be, how black and white we can see things, how kind of like concrete we are. Like, I think our brains are different, equal, but different. So I do think talking to men about those things, especially if it's something that has a lot of shame around it, like women sometimes won't get it, or they'll get it in like a different way that isn't that helpful for us. You need like another dude just to kind of hold you accountable sometimes and be like, oh yeah, here's my version of that thing. Here's my version of that anger or that shame goblin that I have. Well, I want to ask you, Ben, like as we're wrapping up here, we talked about some steps someone can take to get into shape physically, but I'm wondering if somebody who's trying to work holistically, what are some actions that they can take right after listening to this podcast right away to start moving their life on that upward trajectory?
And holistically, we're talking about a little bit more for the mind and for the mental health. I would say, I would say definitely those 4 things that I said, those are also not, even though they help with you physically, it helps a lot with you, especially sleep, I would say. For me, that's something I've noticed a lot. Sleep, of course, eating good, yes. Sleep, very, very important. It's probably one of these things that we tend to take for granted just because it's something we do every single day. We need to, but that people are kind of, they get 4 hours in there, maybe 6 hours there, then it was another 4 hours, then suddenly, we had it 7 hours. So I think start getting in a better sleep pattern. That's going to help a lot with this. Journaling, as I said, very powerful tool. Start practicing more because with journaling comes a lot of self-awareness. Self-awareness for me also to be super helpful. I'm becoming more self-aware about stuff, certain behaviors, because I work a lot with habits and behaviors with my clients. And that's something I feel like that's the stone pillars, the ground pillars of so many stuff. Because you can handle a person, the best training program, the best meal plan, but if they don't manage to actually do it, then it's nothing. So it's like, okay, how can we take you from here to there? And then we go from there to there. So start building up. So I think that's important. But, and meditation's always good. And it doesn't always have to be, because when people talk about meditation, usually because up in, people's heads are the classical sitting position, meditation. I feel for me, I meditate, for example, when I work out, I meditate. When I go for a walk, I meditate. When I do the dishes, I meditate. It sounds maybe weird to people, but for me, meditation, that's when you are at your absolute most present moment. And when you come into this flow state. So I have certain things in my life where I am so present that I almost forget about time. And I'm just like, oh shit, where am I? Almost like that. I'm so centered. And that's working out, making food, dishes. When I play with my niece and nephew, can also do it. The best I think is usually because you're with kids, because they're so present all the time. But, certain things. So that's I think is great. Whatever type of works for you. And what else? Spend time outside, and also, of course, spend time with people in general, socialize. So healthy.
Well, great. Yeah. I mean, those are great things that we work towards. I know that you're available to help them with that. So as we're wrapping up, where can people find more about you online? And if they want to work with you, give you a call.
Well, the easiest is my website, benvoz.com. So BENVOZ.com. And that's my username on Instagram, my username on LinkedIn. So yeah, it's my 3 first letters in Benjamin and 3 first letters in Vozmediano. So Ben Voz.
Awesome. Yeah. And listeners, all that will be in our show notes. You can go check that out. Check out the description of the show and you'll see all of Ben's links. So Ben, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you, Mark.
And listeners, thank you so much for tuning in to the Men's Therapy Podcast. If you like the show, do all the socials, like, share, subscribe, send to somebody that needs, that holistic coaching, that needs, to maybe start to level up their life a little bit, make some friends, attend a bro retreat, start to take care of their mind, body, and soul. So thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next week on another episode of the Men's Therapy Podcast.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe and leave a review. And don't forget to visit menstherapy.online to learn more about the work that we are doing to support and inspire men. Until next time, keep moving forward.